Kwame Alexander, and this podcast was originally inspired by a memoir that I wrote. Not a traditional memoir, y'all. A collection of snapshots of a man remembering all the ways he's loved and wanting to share everything he's learned about love with his two daughters, which it turned out wasn't a whole lot. A poet grappling with love and longing and loss with questions he'd been too afraid to answer. It's been just over a year since the memoir came out, y'all, and oh my, what a year it has been. Professionally, personally, emotionally, I don't even want to say psychologically, but all of the above. I'm not even sure where to begin. Our previous episodes featured yours truly in conversation with other men, fathers, sons, husbands, partners. For this 1 year later special, I thought it was the perfect time to bring some female voices into the fold, to hear their perspectives and help me share my own. So let's get it. Joining me for a roundtable discussion today are my two dear writing colleagues that I'm also honored to call friends. First up, Nikki Shannon Smith, educator, presenter, award-winning author of 20 books, including Our Beautiful Colors, Azalea Lane, Lena and the Burning of Greenwood, a Tulsa Race Massacre survival story, which won the 2023 Oklahoma Book Award. This sister is bad, y'all. Children's book author extraordinaire. I'm so glad you're here, Nikki.
Thank you, Kwame.
Stop sounding so formal.
Thank you, Kwame.
And of course, none other than the indefatigable. Y'all know what that word means?
Definition, please.
No.
My dear, dear friend of 20 years, Tinesha Davis, who's the author of Holler at the Moon, which we all know is an incredible novel. But what most people don't know is it's loosely based on her life. I probably shouldn't say that.
Can't prove it.
I guess the biggest thing is I've known you for 20 years. You know, I consider you to be a sister, a really close friend who I've shared a lot with over the years.
Mm-hmm. I know all of the things.
So
what's in the book and what's not.
So you come at reading this memoir from a different perspective than Nikki, who, while I think we met back in 2015.
I think so.
We didn't really get to know each other, I would say, in a meaningful, significant way, only in the last couple of years.
Right. I think so.
Right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Tinesha, what surprised you most in reading this? Tinesha and I have traveled all around the world together, Tuscany, Ghana. We've traveled a lot working in schools around the United States.
Yeah, Canada, Cayman Islands.
So we spent a lot of time together. Our families have spent time together. Her son and I took him to improv when he was in high school. We used to go to improv every week. So we have Sunday dinner together. So we're really close. So I'm really interested to know, from your vantage point, was there anything in here that was like, whoa?
You know what was woe to me was actually, I do think it was more of the beginning. Because like you said, we have this over 20-year friendship. But I feel like for the first 10 years, I probably thought you was an only child. He has only child energy, right? So somewhere along the way, a sibling would be dropped into a story. It's like, wait a minute, where'd you get a sister from? You know, so it turns out you have two sisters and a brother.
Yeah.
I never knew the background of any of it until I read this book, right? Because in the book, there in the beginning, you reference your father. Actually, that's one of my questions. I have a question. You have a list of questions for your dad.
Right.
And one of the questions was, I wanted to know more about the woman he had in peril. I've wanted to know more about the woman he had a child with, the woman who was not my mother, his wife.
Right.
That was my first time hearing about that.
Oh, that my brother was not my mother's biological son.
Exactly. Because I always heard that he grew up in your home. All of you guys were raised in the same house. So I was always under the assumption that your mom was everybody's mom, because that's what it was spoken about. But then when you say this, then it brought up questions like, wow, who was your mother to actually bring in the child of another woman?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest thing, oh my goodness. And then even a year later, reading these questions that you say you never asked your dad, a year later, I'm wondering, did you ever ask your dad since then?
So
did we get the answers? Because I needed the answers.
Right.
We need the
I
sequel.
wrote all throughout this book. My book is written in.
So I think one of the advantages to writing the memoir for me was that these unanswered questions, or these unasked questions of my father, and these unreconciled feelings, or these uncertain futures that were a part of my life, they were all in this book. And so my sisters read it, my dad read it,
Right.
Nandi read it, Steph read it. The people who love me and who I love all read it. So even though for the past decades of my life, I've been unafraid of the confrontation or of being authentic, like I actually asked the questions in the book and they all read them. So there was this transfer of information. Kwame needs to know this, or Kwame doesn't know this, or Kwame's unsure. And so each of them read it and responded in interesting ways. But over the course of the past year, I've gotten a lot of the answers to the questions. One of the biggest questions, did you and mommy ever, I never saw y'all hold hands. How were y'all romantic? Why you ain't say you love me? Why didn't those words come out of your mouth? And the answers came in random text messages because he figured out how to do emojis and stuff. So I got this one text message, Tinesha, that said, no, they either came in text messages or they came in face-to-face conversations. So one text message came at about 11:55 p.m. one night in August, this past August. He called his parents mother and daddy. And he said, he texted, mother and daddy never told me they loved me. But I knew mother loved me because when I was stationed at Ellsworth Air Force Base, 2,000 miles away, my mother wrote me every week. He said, daddy never told me he loved me, but I knew he loved me because he bought the stamps and the envelopes for those letters. He said, Kwame, when you get to this place the old folks call the by and by, you will know how you were loved. In the meantime, I love you. And so it reminded me and showed me that we love in different ways. How we want to be loved and how we are loved may not always line up.
Yeah.
But we have to sort of extend a little bit of grace. And I realized I had to do that in that moment.
Yes.
Because at that time, when he sent that text, I hadn't heard or spoken to Nandi in 3 years. Who was who was dealing with the same sort of uncertainty. Because I told her I loved her. But her thing was she wasn't seeing it. She wasn't feeling it. How we want to be loved and how we're loved can be two totally different things.
So has that made you adapt the way you love so that you're expressing it verbally and through your actions as well? Have you changed as a result of that?
Look, both of you are mothers. I am a father, and it took me a long time to learn that it is, when it comes to our children, I have seen my sisters, I have seen my mother, I have seen women who are friends' mother, and sometimes I'm just stumped and stupefied. Like, why are you letting the kids do that? Or why aren't you reacting like this? I'll see Stephanie and Samaya arguing and fussing, and I just, like, what is going on? I don't understand. Why? You need to tell. And 5 minutes later, after this knockdown drag out, they're hugged up on the couch watching a movie.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I finally realized that as parents, I don't know if it's our one main goal or objective, but it's at the top. And that is to unconditionally love our kids. To let them know that they are unconditionally loved. No matter what you do, I may not agree with it, I may not like it, I may argue you down, but at the end of that, you are going to know there's never going to be a question that I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And that love is the most important thing. And my father did that. Like, he ain't never say I love you.
Yes.
But he showed me he loved me in very particular and specific ways that I finally realized. And I realized I wasn't doing it with Nandi. That in my mind, because of this argument we had in 2020, it was more important for me to be right than for her to be loved.
Yeah.
Unconditional love, it's crucial. And it's not just that for me as a mother, it's not just for them to know that they're unconditionally loved, but everything that comes with that. It doesn't matter why you come to me in need. We can talk about that part later. You just need to know that whatever it is that you've done or whatever has happened, that this is where you come for the love. This is where you come for the healing, for the help.
And I feel like as we mature more and more as a society emotionally, we're emotionally maturing. So back when our parents were raising us, it was, it was a lot of basic, we're surviving, we're taking care of you. Ain't nobody got time for all that nuance. Now, like, if you think about the book, the love languages, the 5 love languages, that's what that reminds me of. The fact that you're saying, like, your dad said one thing, this is how I showed love. However, the way you were built, you needed to receive love a different way.
I needed the words.
But you needed the words.
My father
so you're a words of affirmation
But
person.
I learned how to be a word person from my father.
Yeah.
How ironic.
Yeah. So you're a word of affirmation person where words go further for you. And so I wonder, when you look at your children, Nandi, Samaya, what is their love language? And
there you go. And there's the rub. Because I am a word person.
And they ain't got time to hear all. They don't feel like hear about
they
it.
Don't need, They don't need that.
The words.
I mean, they want it.
It's nice.
They don't crave it. Their love language is completely different. And it took me a while to realize that.
Yeah.
But I wonder, too, if we're born at our base, if those needs are way more universal than 5 styles of needing love.
I'm not a word person. See, my parents never told me they loved me either. We
I
never hugged. I don't even care.
But I think we all want to be held and nurtured and seen.
Yeah, but I was never hugged and nurtured, and I don't, ew.
And so now it's ew.
Yeah, ew. I'm more of an acts of service person. So therefore, when you do for me, I feel that more. When you actually physically do things for me, more so than buying me something. I'm not a gift person, so you can't buy me. However, I show love by giving gifts. And I'm pretty sure for my son, it's probably horrible. I don't even know what his language is either. And in that way, I'm probably failing him too. I
don't know if you're failing him, because I've seen you with him. And he is where he is today because of you. If you weren't in his life, Lord knows what would be going on with that kid.
But I mean, just having this conversation, like right now in this moment, this is what it's bringing up for me with what you're saying, like with Nandi and, what you wasn't giving her. It's making me question, am I giving my son what he needs? Because I will give money. I will pay to help solve the problem.
Right.
But the problems keep happening. So, so he probably needs something different that I'm not equipped, because I'm not a sappy, emotional, touchy-feely, loving person.
And maybe we just need to offer a menu.
Yeah.
And try, each day a different little tidbit of love shown in a different way.
Before I won the Newbery Medal, my father and I maybe talked once a month, once every couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
After I won the Newbery Medal, we talked every day. Because he wanted to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And he's told me on numerous occasions that I was an experiment, that they were trying to create a critically thinking, creative, entrepreneurial writer.
And they did that.
So success.
And so when that was achieved, he could sit back and say, oh, it worked.
It worked.
But did you resent that?
No. Again, Kwame, before writing the memoir, probably would have resented it. But Kwame, after writing the memoir, which became a portal to being able to understand how I'm loved and how to love and what love is and what really matters, extended him the grace.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I talked about when I was on Fresh Air with Terry Gross, she said, wasn't that unfair, the way he raised you? Mm-hmm. And I said, that's not the right question. Mm-hmm. The question is, would I be sitting here talking to Terry Gross on Fresh Air, having written 40 books? Would I have won an Emmy Award?
Had he not.
And so I began to extend him the grace, because he is who he is. He loved how he loved, and words for him were the indicator.
And the grace is so important. I heard you talk about extending grace to your dad, but I got to listen to you in conversation at the Cultural Center of Cape Cod, and you talked about your relationship with Nandi, and I sat there as a daughter listening to that, and I just broke into tears in the audience, because seeing you as my friend who I love, dealing with what you're dealing with your daughter, made me really empathetic to the dad in the scenario. And it's not the same grace that I'm giving to my father. So what I wanted for you was not what I think I extend to my father.
Wow.
Yes. So one of my questions was, everyone always asks you in your conversations, well, what would you tell a new father? Or what advice would you give to a father? I was thinking, well, what would he have a daughter do? If he were being completely honest, what does a father need from his daughter? What advice or, wisdom would you give a daughter trying to mend or build or preserve a relationship with her dad?
You're a writer. So if you're asking, like, for you, what better way than the words on a page, than line after line, brick by brick, bird by bird, just put the words down. That whatever those answers are, you and I talked about this yesterday. I was having trouble working on a line or a stanza, and you were like, Kwame, get a pencil, get some paper, and just write. It worked for me. It doesn't just work when we're writing in our sort of
the
public
last letter my
lives.
dad found that I wrote did not go well. So I don't know if that's the route I'm going to take.
And sometimes the letters aren't for them. Sometimes the letters are just to get the words out. But it's a really tough question. Like, what is the advice for a daughter, for a child looking to rebuild or reconcile that relationship with a parent?
Or think of it from the standpoint of, if you could have made some humble request of your daughter, what might that have been as you tried to heal and repair?
When I look back on that 3 years, I see why she stayed away. I get it now. I wanted to be right. I thought I was right. Even when we tried to go to therapy together,
Ooh.
and she agreed to do that. And my whole thing was, I can't wait to tell my part of the story because I'm right. So arguably, I was the kind of father, the kind of dad. It wasn't cool. I was a jerk or whatever, however you want to categorize or label it.
Stubborn. Dads can be really stubborn.
Right?
Really stubborn.
I'm like, but what if, I know it wasn't the point, but it's like, but what if you was right? Like,
it's not worth it.
Okay.
It's never worth it with our kids. What if we were right? That's not the question.
And when it's all said and done, if something were to go wrong, you're not going to sit there and go, well, I was right. That's not what's going to go through your head or your heart.
Look, the other part of it is when I take stock and I look back on it, I was actually wrong.
So there it is.
You're gonna have to explain that to me after this.
that I in fact was not even right. And here's the moment I realized it. We will be right back.
Why Fathers Cry 1 Year Later is brought to you by Kirk & Kirk Eyewear. With over 100 years of history in the optical industry, the Kirk family continues to innovate and push the boundaries between fashion and eyewear. Check out the Haiku Collection, a limited edition collaboration with #1 New York Times bestselling author and Emmy award-winning producer Kwame Alexander. Featuring 2 styles and 4 different colorways, each frame is handcrafted in Italy and beautifully packaged with a gorgeous booklet featuring original haiku penned by Kwame himself. The Haiku Collection, available now. Head to kirkandkirk.com/Kwame and find your perfect frames.
After 3 years of being estranged, she finally calls and she says, Dad, I'm ready to meet. And we're going to meet at this cafe in Old Town Alexandria. So I'm still sort of in my feelings and I'm still in this mode of I'm right. And I'm thinking of how, okay, she's come to her senses. I'm going to show her a lot of love and I'm going to stand my ground because I was right. And I get to this cafe and I walk in and she's sitting behind this high top table and I walk around to hug her and she doesn't get up. I'm like, okay, so we're not going to hug. And so I sit down across from her. So how you doing? What's going on? I'm just trying to have small talk. And she says, no, we're not doing any of that. You've met Nandi.
Yeah, she's your child.
That's the problem right there. That's the problem when the daughter's just like the dad.
She's strong and she's dramatic.
Yes.
She says, no, we're not doing all that. I need to know where you are. Is there anything you need to say? And she's just looking at me. And it just hits me. It hits me right then in that moment. That's the first time that I realized that I had been wrong. And I understood why and how. And I'm not going to share that in this moment. I mean, at some point, maybe I'll write about it if she lets me. But in that moment, I said, I'm sorry, and I love you. And she just cried. And that was the beginning of the healing and the reconciliation. But it wasn't the words. I knew intimately in my heart of hearts that I had been wrong. And I guess she could see that.
Yeah. Well, good for you for the apology. I think in most situations, an apology goes a long way. But if someone can see on your face that it's coming from your heart, I think that matters. I also think that sometimes daughters are raising their fathers. And I'll just leave it at that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. My father, I've never heard my father apologize to anyone about anything, anywhere. I've never seen him cry. I got a random text one day And he said, I'm sorry for what I put my family through.
Ooh.
I didn't ask him to say that. He was answering a question in this book, and it opened up a conversation.
The heavy weight of fatherhood.
The heavy weight of fatherhood.
That was a deep, deep poem that I loved and said so much. And yeah.
Did reading this book offer anything to you and you? Well, you've kind of talked about it a little bit, about your relationship or your thoughts or your history with your own father.
You know what? Honestly, the book did something else for me. Like on page 4, I wrote down, because you're talking about your mom a lot, and the beautiful ways you described your mom, I wrote down in the margin, like, ooh, I would love to be a mother like that. Is it too late? By the end of the book, page 226, I wrote down, wait, I would love to be a writer like this. Is it too late? Like, for real. Like, you know.
You just
so
it gassing me up.
No, it made me, so take my father out of it, even though today's his birthday, but it made me want to be a better mom, a better mother, and it made me want to be a better writer. Because the way you showed up and the way you bravely told this story. Now, I understand. I want all of the tea. I do. But I love how you balanced giving us what we needed, but keeping enough so that your relationships could obviously mend. They mended. Yeah. They remained intact. They gotten even stronger. In another one of your poems, you write about when a great tree falls, all the birds scatter because they have no branch to perch upon. But you know what I've noticed over this last few years with you? You have taken your place as that tree in your family. Think about it.
Agreed.
Your sisters, you have taken, like, from the trips to the events to the gatherings that you've curated.
Oh, yeah, too.
Yeah.
Oh, there's been a lot. But I at first tried to avoid doing that. I shied away from it. I pushed back on it. I didn't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like
Did you not want the responsibility?
No, I just didn't feel like they need to do that on their own. I don't need to be that person.
But do you also realize that before this book came out, when the great tree falls, like, everybody was almost at odds. Like, your relationship, like, almost all your
all of them.
Yes.
They were all at odds.
And I'm looking at how far you've come. Like, wow.
Yeah.
In a year, they were all at odds.
It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing. You know, I had told my mother on her deathbed, I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of them. Mm-hmm. It was just words. When she passed, I was angry. I was mad. I had blame. With the exception of sending my father his monthly sort of stipend, as it were. Mm-hmm. He calls it his royalties.
That's cute.
You know, I was like, I'm not responsible for any of you. And so I was like, no. And definitely the book got me to a point. Again, it was a portal for me to realize that this is your role. This is your responsibility. You are now the new tree. Mm-hmm. Accept it. Embrace it. This is who you are. This is who you promised her you would be. And this is who you want to be. Mm-hmm. And this is who you can be. Mm-hmm. And once I made that sort of decision, I love it.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to say when you were talking about asking us about what did we take away reading. That was one of the first things, because you did open with your parents. And the first thing I thought was, as a mother, not as a daughter, but can I raise a child like that? And I think it's a combination of who you are when you're born and who you're molded into. Mm. And I think through this book, through the evolution, through life experiences, I think you fully became the love that was poured into you. Mm. And as a mom reading this and you're describing the different things your mom would do, there's a section where you talk about the sting, I think, of your father's tongue and how your mom would come in and make you laugh.
Sure.
And that's what we do. And that's the love that we give. And I think that that's the love that you pay out to everyone around you. So reading it gave me goals to make sure that I was doing that, not just for my own children, but to just love out loud. And if you love someone, to tell them tomorrow's not promised.
Right.
So I think that was one of my biggest takeaways. And as a daughter, I was all over the place reading this. I was angry for you. And then, there were parts where I'm going, yeah. And you and I had a conversation where I just said, like, what's up with dads? What's wrong with y'all? Why are you like this? Yeah. And I even said that I think future generations are getting better. I think there are cultural elements to who the Black man was expected to be.
Yeah.
I think there are cultural elements and historical elements to who mothers, Black women, had to be. Mm-hmm. And our role in keeping our families together by ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
There was a lot. I got a lot out of this book.
Mm-hmm. And I have some, I need more answers though.
So something has been sitting with me for nearly a year now.
Uh-oh, here we go.
No, it's not as bad. It's not as bad as it sounds.
I think the podcast is over now.
Oh, no.
Sarah Grace,
cut off.
are we done?
Mike went black. No, so in the conversation with Kamal Bell in May of last year, you were in person, and there was sort of a quiet pause in that conversation, and Kamal says, he hung his head. So I was watching his body language, and he says, "Why are we bad at love?" And you hung your head too. And there was something about that moment that just, like, my heart just went into my stomach, and it stuck with me. And that question kept coming up. And you have a section in the book called Recipe for Love. And I started my first response was, y'all are not bad at love. So I'm going to say that first and foremost. But if you were to write a recipe for love, what would the ingredients be? And are they different now that you've gone through the journey with the book?
Way different now. I think love, a great deal of it that men don't get, a significant part of it is listening. Mm-hmm. Like paying attention to things and to beings, being aware, listening. I think that's a big part of it, because in reality, I think the women in our lives are telling us how they want to be loved, or they're showing us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we are not paying attention, and we are not listening. I think after writing this memoir, I've become intentional about loving, about listening, about taking the time to be loved and to love. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've become intentional about that. It's like you do something 12 times and then it'll become sort of a habit. Mm-hmm. I'm maybe on number 5 or 6. So I'm just trying to get to that place that I've seen the women in my life naturally be at. Like, right. I got to work at it because I want to be that man.
Right. And you can't leave it to interpretation.
No, but I think he's that man. Kwame's, you see, Kwame's somebody's grandmother. Stop playing. He in the kitchen cooking.
Well, that's the other part.
He making biscuits from scratch. Like,
that's the other part, is the cooking is my way of sort of, because my grandmothers and my mother and my aunts, they did that. And this is sort of, so I'm trying to figure out every entry point I can.
Yeah, you're succeeded. You are overachieving.
I think so too. I think you're doing a good job.
Well, I will say
We're going to give you that credit.
Today he made biscuits and brought it out to the community.
I will say this. I figured out a lot about love. Familial.
Mm-hmm.
Friendship. I'm still working on the romantic part.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
That is the last sort of bridge to cross over, or the last hurdle. It's the most difficult, I find. I feel like if, maybe that's the next memoir, but if I can...
please don't write that memoir.
You open up a whole other can of worms.
I feel like when I figure that one out, it's on. You will have the whole man.
Well, you have definitely come a long way, my friend.
Thank you.
You have definitely come a long way.
I will end with a poem and sort of your last words with your response to the poem. We do a piece in every episode. And I think I'd love to hear your response to Love Lesson.
Okay.
The difference between telling someone you love them and loving them is the difference between pumpkin and sweet potato pie. The difference between loving and being loved is the difference between watering a garden and the autumn harvest. Thoughts, Nikki?
I love that you picked that one. That was actually one I wanted to hear you read in your own voice. It points to the fact that there's someone on the receiving end that's going to interpret what you're saying or doing, and that interpretation is all that matters.
It's everything.
And so you have to watch for the interpretation.
Listen.
Mm-hmm.
Tinesha?
Yeah, I mean, and for me, this is also speaking to my love language, acts of service. The difference between telling someone, the telling of a thing, and the doing the thing.
Right.
But then also the difference between loving and being loved, almost like being loved. I can conquer the world with that. Mm-hmm. So being loved is so much powerful, so much stronger to be loved than for me, because I think we do that all the time, especially as women. We love, but have we truly been loved in return?
In order to give love, you have to have love.
Mm-hmm.
In order to have love, you have to receive love.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't ever want to talk about this book again.
What?
This is old Kwame, and I appreciate it, and I'm grateful, and I'm just ready to move on. And I feel like this was necessary. This was a beautiful experience to be able to wrap up this part of my journey with the two of you. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you for inviting us to do this with you.
Thank you, Tinesha.
Thank you for including me into this conversation.
And congratulations, because not wanting to talk about it anymore might mean it served its purpose.
I think it did.
And that you've done the growth that you needed.
Well, not that I've necessarily finished the growing, but that the door was a portal, and I decided to walk through it. And now I'm involved in doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you all for listening to Why Fathers Cry 1 year later. This has been an exceptional experience. I've learned a great deal. And I hope you've enjoyed this and learned a little bit yourself.
Why Fathers Cry 1 year later is a Big C Entertainment production. Hosted by Kwame Alexander. Produced by Sarah Grace McCandless. Post-production by Jeremy Brieske at Burst Marketing. This episode was recorded at the Chautauqua Institution with special thanks to multimedia producer Dave Munch, to our guest, Nikki Shannon Smith and Tinesha Davis, and to you for listening wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate you. Don't miss part 2 of Why Fathers Cry 1 year later, featuring Kwame in a very special conversation with his eldest daughter, Nandi. Part 2 drops on Father's Day, Sunday, June 16th. For the latest news on Kwame's projects, head to KwameAlexander.com.